All right, live on a Tuesday, 8 o'clock. That means you're watching Open Season with the fellas. We've got the Fearsome Foursome, and we're talking about a whole lot tonight. You know, Dak Prescott just signed a franchise tender. Cam Newton still doesn't have a job. Antonio Brown might be going to the Ravens or Seattle. Jayson Tatum, is he the second best player in the Eastern Conference? Colin Cowherd says yes. What do our guys say? Who could maybe be a Sean Kemp candidate this year? You know, who's going to get a little bit fatter during this offseason? And Paul George left Indiana a couple of years ago, but he mentioned that he could have had the best power forward in the game on the team. Who was he talking about? We'll be talking about that. But first, we have to kick it out, guys, with Dak Prescott signing his franchise tender, getting paid $31.4 million to quarterback America's team. Guys, who wants to take it? How did the Cowboys do on a quarterback, and how much of a tough pill is that to swallow? Dak Prescott for $31.4 million.
I think under a franchise tag, they're playing it correctly. I think he's been underpaid for the first 4 years of his career. I think you franchise him twice, even though next year is 37.7. And you try and win with the window you have. That O-line only has 2-3 years left being elite. Most of that defense is aging. Zeke is a running back who's got, I think, 1,500 touches already. They're built to win now, so there is no price too high for an above-average winning quarterback. Because if you have a bad quarterback and a good everything else, you got nothing.
I disagree. I think they should have moved on from him while they had the chance. There's a quarterback by the name of Cam Newton that's still out there, still unsigned. He's had MVP seasons. You'd be giving him the best offense he's ever had to play with, ever. I think with the new coach coming in, Dak's learning the system down in Dallas anyway. Move on from Dak. Bring in Cam Newton for pennies on the dollar compared to what you're paying Dak. I'd be surprised if Cam was turning down a $12-14 million deal at this point, even for 1 year, just a prove-it contract. If you're Dallas, what do you really have to lose by putting your eggs in Cam Newton's basket as opposed to Dak Prescott's? I think it's a no-brainer, and I think they made the wrong move.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with both you guys. I think Dak Prescott's probably the most overrated quarterback, probably him and Kirk Cousins in the entire NFL. Dak Prescott does not deserve that money, but like Frank said, the one-year deal is much better for them than signing him like a Ryan Tannehill deal right now. Much more than that, but that offense is built on that offensive line and Ezekiel Elliott. They have great receivers, but it's all going to be based off the play action. They can go really far this year. I don't think Dak Prescott's worth that money. I don't think he ever will be worth that money. And we've seen it without Ezekiel Elliott, what that offense is when Dak Prescott is the quarterback. It's a very average offense. And when you're not setting up the play action, it's very hard to get, Dak to throw some accurate passes over 20 yards.
Yeah, I feel like all the words we use with Dak are not things around, does he have a big arm? Is he very talented? Is he extremely fast or anything? I think it's all about talking about the intangibles with him. And I don't think he's necessarily as talented. I mean, you saw him go in the fourth round. I think they could easily put together somebody else, go to the draft. Or I really like what Torti had to say. You've got Cam Newton out there, and you've also got, the red rifle. And you can basically play those two guys and see what you have between them. I'd be surprised if you couldn't get 10 wins out of the two of those guys. So I've got to agree with Torti there. Now, how much is Dak Prescott worth? Let's get to that. So we see Russell Wilson is the number one paid quarterback in the league at $35 million a year. And I think that's well deserved. But Dak Prescott is down at 7th overall. And I feel like, when you guys hear that, does that stand out to you that he shouldn't be anywhere near 7? Where do you kind of see him in the rankings? We always rank quarterbacks. Where do you kind of rank Dak Prescott? You think he's like a top 15 quarterback? Is he outside of that? Is he a top 10 quarterback? Where do you rank him?
Fantasy-wise, he's probably a top 10. Real-life quarterback, he's 15 to 20. I don't see him being any better than In the NFC East, I mean, Wentz is better than him. I mean, Daniel Jones, I guess he's the second best quarter in the NFC East, but that division's kind of a joke. I'd rank him, around 15 to 20.
I think what you have here is a situation where the quarterback ranking is almost relative, right? You look at the Cowboys offense, you look at the studs they have on their O-line, you look at the studs they have a wide receiver, and you look at potentially the best running back over the past 5 seasons in the NFL in Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield with another guy in Tony Pollard who was playing pretty much identically to Zeke when he actually got on the field and got to touch the ball. We are talking about a high-powered offense, and you had Dak Prescott sliding in there and reaping the benefits of it. Like, you could have probably found at least, I would say, 15 other quarterbacks in the NFL who could have produced the same level of season with the coaching and the knowledge of the system he had over the past few years. You bundle everything up, right? You bundle everything up and you look at it and you say, all right, how many other guys could have done this for me with the Cowboys with everything that they have to offer offensively? And I think the answer is definitely around maybe 15 other guys in the NFL. I don't think it's too many more than that, but I'd say about half the league is better. Half the quarterbacks starting in the league are better than Dak Prescott right now, including one who's not even signed in Cam Newton.
Frank, I have a feeling you may disagree.
Yeah, look, Jimmy Garoppolo, they thought that contract was awful, and he's the 11th highest paid quarterback 2 years later. It's not necessarily that he needs to be the best quarterback to be the highest paid. He's a free agent, so he's going to get that money. You need to reset the market. Tom Brady did what he did was an anomaly. Everybody else gets paid. He's got 2 division titles. He's been in the league for 4 years. That guy gets paid. He's gotten paid in every other era besides this one. And I think he's probably somewhere 12 to 15. But I don't know that 12 to 15 guys would have thrown for 4,900 yards, even in today's game. 5,000 yards is still 5,000 yards. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's also probably his ceiling. You know what I mean? So there's something to be said for that. But the guy has the second highest winning percentage in his first 4 seasons next to Tom Brady. I mean, you pay that guy.
Do you attribute that to Dak, though? I mean, I feel like he's mostly gotten that from handing the ball off and a pretty good defense, a pretty good – they've had a decent defense. Some of their guys have been getting hurt over, Sean Lee hasn't been able to stay healthy, but they've had a great running game. And I feel like Dak isn't a guy who makes all the throw, especially seeing him up close last year when they played against New England.
That was particularly poor showing for Dak. That hurts my case.
I feel like it's like Ezekiel Elliott is 40 and 24 in his career almost, and he's dragging along Dak. But I mean, how do you see it?
Even if you believe that, you can't think that he's going to continue to do that. I don't know how many running backs do it for longer than 5-6 years, and the guy's already got 4 in.
I'm just saying the reason he's been successful is because he's had Ezekiel Elliott, because he's had a high-powered offense. Like Torti said, it's kind of like you could have anybody that's getting the ball out and getting it to those playmakers. I feel like it's majorly the playmakers making plays rather than Dak being like, oh, Dak made that throw.
I'll tell you, there are a lot of quarterbacks who hold onto the ball and don't get the ball to their playmaker. Quarterback. What he does is get the ball to his playmakers, which he's had a lot. But that's his job, and he's performed at his job. And like I said, he's won 2 division titles. Yes, the worst division in football all 4 of those years, but he's won it. He won a playoff game in Seattle, which is not easy for any quarterback. I'll tell you, 12 to 15 quarterbacks in the league cannot win a playoff game in Seattle. So he's got some credentials. I'm just saying, any other quarterback, blank face in a blank resume, he gets paid after that. No matter what that number is, the number is ridiculous. But everybody's number is ridiculous. Mahomes and Watson are about to get ridiculous numbers that are going to dwarf whatever Dak gets on the franchise tag.
But do you think that he should be anywhere near consideration for a deal that those guys are going to – I mean, those guys are going to get $40 million a year deals. You think Dak should be saying no to $35 million a year over 5 years?
I think he had the resume Garoppolo and Stafford did when they reset the market. So I think his goal as a pro athlete should be to try to reset the market at his position. Free agency is about being free. The guy's got credentials, and he's free. You pay that man, or he needs to hold out to get paid. That's his job as a not just an athlete, but as a somebody who's going to leave the league in a better position. Again, what Tom Brady did was rare. He's got to get paid, and somebody will pay him. I mean, that guy hits free agency. He's going to get $40 million a year, whether he's worth it or not. Would I do it? No. Do I think he's worth it? Yes. But that's based on what I think it means to get paid in pro sports. Carl Crawford was worth his contract. He just never lived up to it. He was worth the contract he got. He didn't maintain that level of production. Dak Prescott deserves to get paid. Doesn't matter what the number is.
Oh, let's not get into Carl Crawford over here because I might lose my shit over here. That guy ruined the Red Sox. But so two things. One, I don't think Dak Prescott is the reason why the Cowboys haven't gone farther. I think it was Jason Garrett because he's a terrible coach, terrible play.
Agreed.
Second, I don't think Dak Prescott would have got $35 million on the market. Ryan
No.
got $35 with the Titans. I don't think Dak Prescott gets that deal if he becomes a free agent, like Kirk Cousins did when he went to the Vikings and got $30 million per season guaranteed. I don't see Dak Prescott getting that in the NFL today, because once you sign someone to that deal, your team is like, you can't pay all these other players. Like Mahomes and Watson are going to get it because they're elite, talented quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson will get it because he's elite. These other quarterbacks, once they give him that contract, everybody else can't get paid, and you watch those teams just fall apart. And I really, this is a benefit to the Cowboys. It's a one-year deal, but if they gave him a multi-year deal, you can't pay a lot of their other players.
I mean, how much can the Cowboys realistically even spend on offense? They're paying Zeke out the ass. They're paying him the most amount of money. They just signed Amari Cooper to a quarterback level contract, basically. He's getting $20 million over 5 years. I mean, can the Cowboys even – they're pretty hamstrung as it is. And to spend all that money on Dak, I mean, they'll never be able to invest in a defense.
I mean, you have to think about this as a GM, right? Like, if someone's not performing, if Amari's not, living up to where we thought he would be with the Cowboys, or CeeDee Lamb overtakes him as the true number one, you have to think that at that point you pull the trigger on trading an Amari Cooper, where he was actually offered more on the open market by the Redskins than what he accepted from the Cowboys. And I don't think many of us really thought he was going to get that big of a contract offer. And at least, I figured $15 million. What did he end up getting? Like $19 million a year? $20 million per season to be a wide receiver in the NFL. Look at how much Bill Belichick pays wide receivers, and you have yourself a chuckle. I don't think the whole wide receiver group with the Patriots is getting paid as much as Amari Cooper alone is. But you probably have to look at flipping him, and or if Dak's not performing, you bring in Andy Dalton or potentially, some other quarterback, or draft someone next season, maybe franchise him one more year if you need to, and then move on. It still maintains flexibility for the Cowboys without accepting a long-term contract for Dak to make moves as the years go on.
So, guys, we've talked a little bit about Cam Newton. We've been around it, but I mean, Cam Newton, still no job. What do you think is going to be the best option for him moving forward? Do you think he waits until an injury happens? Do you think somebody's going to sign him before the year goes on? I mean, for me, at this point, I think that he's basically waiting till someone gets injured. I don't think he's going to go to a team, because it seems like he could have gone to a team if he wanted to. So it seems like he's waiting for an injury. How do you guys kind of see it playing out?
I think he's going to wait to get an injury, and I do think it's going to happen sooner than people think because of the COVID and like the testing, and not the testing, but the training is going to be different for all these players going into next season. There's already injuries coming out, like star players breaking their legs and everything, and I think it's going to become sooner rather than later that in this off season, or I guess preseason, one quarterback will go down, and Cam Newton will be the best option available. I mean, he's going to be the number one free agent available, and I do think someone will go down in the preseason, at least out to a midway point, because of the lack of the ability to practice and training for the athletes.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of the year that Jay Cutler came back for the Dolphins. It's like think you might just wait till that spot comes up, and then just be able to take that. He's going to be the number one shoo-in for a job, and it's crazy how it works like that. It's easier. The fact that you can just like kind of hold out is interesting, rather than having to join a team. But it's all about the player these days, and I guess he can do that if he wants. So it seems like that's what he's going to do, and I'm sure there's going to be an injury at quarterback. There pretty much always is, in preseason or whatever. But seems like that's what he's positioned to do, is wait.
Yeah, I think the best fit for him would be here. Genuinely, I think the Patriots would be a great fit just because I think Josh McDaniels has always wanted a more mobile quarterback than Tom. Yeah. I think maybe Pittsburgh, if Big Ben comes back. I used to love Mason Rudolph. Reality is reality. That's not an NFL quarterback.
No.
Him and Duck Hodges are not your answer. So if Big Ben can't come back, I mean, that's an elbow injury to a 40-year-old quarterback. What Tom's doing at 43 makes you rethink 40-year-olds, but it doesn't have an option. You have him, Favre, and that's it. List of 40-year-old quarterbacks who did anything worth their salt.
Yeah, for some reason, I don't think Roethlisberger and Brady are eating the same diet.
No, there's no avocado ice cream there. No.
I mean, you look at the way the NFL is trending, and you look at the way that they're protecting quarterbacks now more so than ever. And you'd have to think, though, that there's going to be more cases of quarterbacks playing in their late 30s and potentially early 40s, as Tom Brady is really truly paving the way for as the first guy to do so since Vinny Testaverde to consistently be playing at an NFL level beyond 40. Anyway, I do think that Cam Newton to the Steelers would be a great fit, but I love the idea of him in Raiders colors and seeing what the three-way QB competition of Cam Newton, Marcus Mariota, and David Carr could bring to the table. Because I think Cam Newton's the best quarterback out of that crop, and the Raiders have a team that's bound to bounce back and have a pretty good run with Gruden as the head coach.
Yeah. You mentioned, quarterbacks these days and how they prepare them so much and, how the training is all different. Cam Newton's 31. How much do you guys think he has left in the tank? He's been through some pretty significant shoulder injuries. And then I think it was, I don't know what it necessarily was last year, but wasn't able to play a majority of the year. And a guy that's taken a lot of tackles, a guy that's ran to try to score a lot of touchdowns and taken a lot of beatings. He's 31. Do you think he can condition himself to play till like 40 or something like that? Or do you think he's going to be a guy that's going to have a pretty short, he's got 1-2 good years left in him? How much more do you see in Cam Newton?
You've already seen Cam make the jump to go vegan, switch up his eating style. A lot of what Tom Brady's doing, I believe Cam is doing to get himself ready, get his body right. Even Tom, before he really switched off into being this, health guru, he was pretty unhealthy. He admits himself, he was getting injured more, his body was wearing down, and he made that lifestyle change. And that's really what's allowed him to go about his business for as long and at as high a level as he has. So seeing an athlete, a player making that type of a change to get away from meat and try to at least make that difference in his body from the diet on, you got to think that he's extremely committed to playing for a long time.
Cam Newton probably can't reach 40, but he's got good years left in him because he played 7 games last year. He was 5-2 and had 107 quarterback rating, which is higher than his MVP season. Was he better than that year? Probably not, but he's got.
Really? He was 5-2 last year?
Yep.
All right. I did not know that.
Yep.
Well, people made it seem like nuts that Allen was able to win some games, but
I think
Kyle Allen was 2-1 and then lost 5 straight, I think.
I think he's got I know the Brady thing, switching up his diet. The only difference is Brady and Cam Newton are 2 completely different players. Brady avoids tackles where Cam Newton in his career has always been the aggressive one. How many touchdowns does he have? The goal line touchdowns that he has where he's jumping in the linebackers and getting killed. I don't even know how many concussions he's had. But if you look at his pictures and his videos, he looks like a freaking linebacker playing quarterback now. He's enormous. If he can avoid,
he really does,
and if he gets avoid getting tackled and getting the ball quick, he can do it for another 5-6 years. I don't see, he's very good at the 10, 15-yard in routes with quick receivers. If he can do that, he can stick because he's accurate with those. It's just the deep balls that he's not accurate with. And once he runs and tries to get extra yards instead of just throwing out of bounds or diving, that's where he gets in trouble. If he can avoid that, he can play for a couple more years.
And just for the record, Cam Newton was actually 0-2 last year. So Frank, you're a little off on the 5-2.
Frank, 5-2. I knew that he was not. Because I remember they're making a deal out of Allen winning games. They're Cam couldn't win. All right, 0-2.
Yeah,
Thank you. I'm glad we had a stat check on that one.
He was.
I'm stat checking
preseason
because we would have thought Cam Newton was a lot better leaving this call.
He would probably be signed right now if he went 5-2.
Yeah, if he went 5-2 last year,
yes,
he still would have had a broken foot.
Did he still have?
He was hurt. He played through injury. You can't take that away from him. So I feel like the record's something where you have to look at it with a grain of salt because he wasn't throwing the ball right. If we assume that his shoulder with an extra offseason to repair and work on it, I mean, maybe he's back to the old Cam. All I know is his MVP season, he had a guy by the name of Ted Ginn taking the top off of defenses, and I just remember him slinging the ball downfield. And I think Cam is at his best when he's doing that. He's allowed to buy time in the pocket and has a guy who can break away for a deep ball catch. That's why I said the Raiders, you look at Henry Ruggs and what he could potentially be for a guy like Cam. I mean, that's a huge difference maker. A mobile quarterback, a speedster down the field, which is also the reason why I'm expecting very big things from Lamar Jackson and Hollywood Brown, and hopefully Antonio Brown when he gets signed to the Ravens. But we'll get to that later, won't we?
Oh, we certainly will. Or we could even get to that now. It seems like he's trying out or it seems like the Seattle Seahawks are interested in him as well as the Ravens. I think that would be absolute death if he went to the Ravens. I mean, he would be so good. I mean, Seattle, we're going to have to play them probably less or whatever. So I guess being on the East, I don't worry about them as much. But I just think about Baltimore being able to add Antonio Brown. I think that would just be lethal. Because as you mentioned, they have Hollywood Brown. They have the tight ends. They've created that team really just to be able to fit so well for what Lamar Jackson does. Like we watched teams do it years ago. But I don't think any team's done a better job of putting the personnel around a quarterback than the Ravens have over the past couple of years. I mean, they've really done everything to make him as good as possible. So to give him Antonio Brown, I just think that's crazy. But I think it's whether or not Antonio Brown can stay clean. I mean, he wasn't able to do it with the New England Patriots. So what the hell makes you think he could do it with the Ravens?
Two things about the Ravens. One, if Lamar Jackson's his quarterback, how many games in until Antonio Brown starts complaining he's not getting
for targets?
Because Hollywood Brown used to get 3 targets a game. If you got a pass, it's like a 60, 65-yard touchdown, which is great. But Antonio Brown's all about precision routes, 10, 15 ins and outs, and I don't know how long that would last. Second thing is, if he actually gets signed, when can he play? Because he hasn't been suspended yet. That probably would be at least 8 to 10 games because of everything that's happened. They haven't even looked into his cases yet because Goodell said he wouldn't look into it until a team had interest in signing him. So I don't know where he's going to go. I am an Antonio Brown fan. That game with the Dolphins was literally like, holy crap, Super Bowl. And then he's the most talented. Like his footwork is far above any other receiver in the NFL. I hope he gets his way, but I don't know if the Ravens will work out because of the lack of targets he would get.
So you think Seattle's the spot for him?
Sure. I mean, that could work. I just, look at his career. He's played with Brady and Roethlisberger, who are both sit-back quarterbacks that huck the ball.
And give him the ball plenty of times.
Russell Wilson throws the ball a lot more than he used to. That could work. But Lamar Jackson is more run and, utilizing the tight ends. And then occasionally throwing the deep ball to Hollywood Brown.
Alex, you look like you disagree. What do you think about Antonio Brown to the Ravens?
It's amazing how you can just look into me, see my soul, and see I'm unsettled. Because Antonio Brown is the greatest wide receiver the NFL's seen in the last 10 years. Probably since Randy Moss, Antonio Brown has been consistently speaking the best wide receiver that has stepped foot on the gridiron.
100% agree with you.
If you pair him with Lamar Jackson, they will feed him the football. You are effectively replacing Willie Snead with Antonio Brown, who I believe is still in his prime. You're looking at Snead getting what, like 4 targets a game, maybe? Like Hollywood Brown getting what, 3 or 4 targets a game as well? I mean, that's out of necessity here. We're talking about receivers who can't catch the ball, and Hollywood Brown who can't stay healthy. I mean, most of his targets were going to Mark Andrews over the middle. When you look at the Ravens and what they're built on speed, and they utilize that speed to run the ball as effectively as I think anyone has in a very long time. But if you have Antonio Brown out there, that's a mismatch. They might have to double team him. Then, okay, if you double team Antonio Brown, what are you going to do about Lamar Jackson? What are you going to do about Hollywood Brown? It would turn them into the best offense in the NFL, hands down. Antonio Brown's got all the reason in the world to make this fit. He's going to an arch rival of the Steelers. He's going to play with his little cousin. He's going to play with the NFL MVP. This is literally the perfect stage for Antonio Brown to come in and make a difference and potentially keep his head down and do the right thing for the first time in a few years. So I think Antonio Brown absolutely is a perfect fit for the Ravens, and they would be out of their minds not to sign him, because otherwise you're going to see another game just like the playoffs last year where receivers are dropping balls left and right. Lamar Jackson's throwing it right in the cradle, and they're just dropping it like it's nothing, and which was tough to watch when the Titans beat them. So
I agree with everything you said, except for the fact that if they're doubling him, that means less targets for Antonio Brown. And the second thing, how many times a game did Lamar Jackson throw the ball?
Well, that's my point. Who did he have to throw it to? And Antonio Brown, they can't double team him, is my point. You've got a Hollywood and you've got Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. It's like, Antonio Brown's killing us, we have to double team. No, you can't. You literally cannot, because he will shred you. They will shred you another way with Lamar Jackson's feet or a deep ball to Marquise Hollywood Brown. You can't double team 2 wide receivers. It's going to be a nightmare.
But Lamar Jackson was successful at Louisville based off the offense they're running right now, the 2 tight end set. His offense, how he's successful, is the tight end set, the tight ends in the middle of the field. Lamar Jackson, you can't consider him an accurate passer.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can consider him an accurate passer. Yes. Do I think he's the most accurate in the game? No. But I think that's
Dak Prescott's more accurate than Lamar Jackson.
No, absolutely not.
Yes, he is.
No.
Oh,
but also,
Frank comes in to defend Dak.
He's also not. Lamar Jackson isn't Antonio Brown accurate, which is a whole nother level of precision. Antonio Brown should go to a team like the Packers or Tampa Bay, who doesn't need him. But those are the offensive schemes that he works in. Him going to the Ravens doesn't make them as unguardable as it would other teams, because Lamar Jackson, you just have to muddy up the middle of the field. And for Antonio Brown, that's the worst case scenario. You can't run any of your option routes. You can't do half of your underneath stuff. If he goes to that team, Marquise Brown gets more yards and more catches. And I'm not sure that Antonio Brown is happy with that. But that's the way the scheme would be set up. Everything would be clogged up in the middle. You'd have one deep high safety, and Marquise Brown would take the top off. That's how that would go. They'd run the ball 30 times, 3 play actions, and none of them would go to AB.
He should go to the Eagles. Honestly, go to the Eagles.
You guys are judging Lamar Jackson
Absolutely.
with one quality wide receiver who played maybe half the games last year. Why do you think he wasn't picking the outside corners of the field off? Because he had Willie Snead out there and Seth Reynolds and whoever, God knows, Chris Moore, the worst wide receiver corps in the league. The Ravens had the worst wide receiver corps in the league. The Ravens and the Patriots had the worst wide receiving corps in the league, hands down.
And the best.
And what?
And a top 3 tight end.
But the top tight end.
Which is what that offense needs.
Top tight end.
And also, what, 2 good running backs, and now they just drafted Dobbins? Like, you think they're going to pass more? They have Dobbins and Ingram. Like,
why wouldn't they pass more? Why wouldn't they pass more? If they bring in AB, they're going to pass more.
But why?
Sure, but maybe to the detriment of Lamar Jackson and the betterment of that offense. Sure, they will pass more, but I'm not sure that that's best case scenario.
Yeah, I honestly feel like the more you make that team pass, the better you feel.
Exactly.
If you can make it so that Lamar Jackson can't run every other time and Mark Ingram can't run every other time, and you make him have to pick it off and be able to throw to guys but I do think they would be incredibly lethal. I agree with Alex, the fact that you wouldn't be able to double team. Like, look at how many deep bombs they were able to get last year, big explosive plays to not that great wide receivers, you're going to be bringing in a guy that's going to make things a lot more comfortable for Lamar Jackson. He's going to be open on like 15-yard routes all over the place. Now, Lamar Jackson's not the type of quarterback that he should be set up with. And I agree to Justin's point, like that if you don't get the targets, I think he could buy out. But I do think he just makes that team extremely lethal. I mean, I don't think there's any taken away from that.
How many times the Ravens come back and win games last year? The reason why the Ravens won so many games is because they got up big.
They got ahead.
If you get them down by 2 touchdowns, that's prime. You want Lamar Jackson throwing the ball. You want five wide receiver sets and him throwing the ball.
Because their wide receivers are trash. Yes, that is what you want.
No, because Lamar Jackson is throwing quarterback.
No, it's because his wide receivers are the worst group in the NFL.
Okay.
So it made Lamar Jackson look bad.
The years that Brady was throwing to freaking Dobbs. Oh, God. What was 06? Who were those receivers?
Aaron Dobson?
No.
Dobson.
The guy that just died. The
Chad
crazy
Rashay Caldwell.
He wasn't bad.
Championship because of Brady. It wasn't because like Lamar Jackson can throw. He was playing with crappy receivers up until we got Moss, and he was able to do it because he's a good passing quarterback. Lamar Jackson is not.
New England wide receivers did their job. The Ravens
had a good wide receiver for like 3 games. If you're a good quarterback, you can make receivers. Lamar Jackson is a good quarterback, but he's multifaceted. He's not that type of good quarterback.
I name 2 better spots for him. The Eagles.
I think he's a better athlete than quarterback.
The Eagles and
sure.
49ers are better spots for him because the 49ers, Deebo Samuel's out for the year, I'm pretty sure. He broke his leg.
Yeah.
Put him on the 49ers with Kittle and who else did that? No, Sanders is on the Saints now, but who were the receivers?
Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah.
They drafted him.
Antonio Brown there. That's perfect. Like
and in Shanahan's offense. That'd be nice.
I'd really like to see him in Green Bay, but they'll never do it.
Offense.
Yeah, why won't I don't understand why Green Bay won't get that's a great point. They will not get Aaron Rodgers a weapon.
Well, they don't have an owner.
He's had
and their GM doesn't.
They haven't drafted any wide receiver in the first round. I mean, like I've seen there's some stat about like quarterbacks touchdown passes to first rounders. And it's like Tom Brady has like 150, Peyton Manning has like 150. I think Aaron Rodgers has like 6 passes to like someone who is drafted in the first round. Like they have not given him the best talent at wide receiver, I'll say.
Is Devontae Adams not a good receiver?
He's a good receiver, but he was taken in the second round.
Greg Jennings, are these not good receivers?
Did you think Jordy Nelson was like an amazing receiver like before? I thought Aaron Rodgers made him a great receiver.
If you have 1,500 yards in the NFL, you're a great wide receiver.
You didn't think that Aaron Rodgers made him at all?
Of course.
If you put Jordy Nelson with Tom Brady, probably same results. If you put him with Russell Wilson, probably same results. Yes, it took a talented quarterback to bring the most out of him, but that doesn't diminish his overall value and what he could have done on other teams. I mean, I'm sure he's still a 1,000-yard wide receiver, even with a shitty quarterback. So that's my stance on.
Stan Rodgers complaining either. His running back is a top 5 running back. Devontae Adams is a better receiver than any Patriots drafted receiver. Greg Jennings is better than any Patriots drafted receiver. Jordy Nelson, probably the same thing.
Those are second-round guys, though, I think.
Okay.
I'm just saying they haven't really drafted in the first round or, gone out and gotten that big free agent for him.
Yeah, Green Bay's sketchy.
They really haven't. I mean,
they've been a little sketchy towards Aaron Rodgers.
I don't like Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, exactly. I don't like him, but I could see why he's pissed.
But their team now is more running and defense, and it worked last year more than it had the past 3 or 4 years, where it's just Aaron Rodgers running around throwing the ball. Like their offense is moving in a different direction.
Yeah, I think
they don't
want
you can tear your rotator cuff on your throwing arm like that. They have to run the ball more. He's 35, 36, and again, he's torn both shoulders and is throwing one twice. I think, like you naturally. And honestly, they have done nothing to help him. And it's sad because I was never the biggest Aaron Rodgers fan, like ever, like still not. But they should have provided him with more than they have. And you say it was running in defense, and it was early on last year. That defense wilted down the season. And I'm not sure how legitimate I think it is to begin with. Their running game is legit, and they're going to be fine in that regard. But they
I
need
feel
to
like
offer
I've
him.
never been scared of a Green Bay defense either.
Their secondary is good. Their front line is not very good. Defensive line.
I mean, the year they won the Super Bowl, Charles Woodson, Clay Matthews,
Charles
Reggie
Woodson was
White.
a beast.
You could be-
sorry,
yeah.
that's the 99.
right? Well, yeah, sure. I mean, if we want to go all the way back to Reggie White, yeah, but that's more one singular player that has you losing sleep at night in Reggie White. But that Packers team with AJ Hawk and those guys, I mean, they had a pretty solid squad when they won the Super Bowl. But
I always
that's the
thought
thing.
AJ Hawk
Why do you
was
think Aaron
overrated.
Rodgers? Why do you think Rodgers hasn't been back to the dance?
Because
Yeah.
he's not very good in big games. Look at his record
Oh.
against winning teams.
Yeah, because his defense is letting up 30 points a game.
Look at
There's only so much you can do.
defense. He's winning games left and right.
Who?
Deshaun Watson, the Texans' defense is horrendous.
Well, I'll tell you what, they were exceptionally bad after they got a 24-point lead on the Chiefs this past year. So defense still wins championships. I mean, obviously, this past year, we saw the Chiefs come from behind to win, but their defense still had to stop the 49ers many a time down the stretch to actually pull out
And
that
they
win.
didn't have the best defense, but they had playmakers. You know, they had like Tyrann Mathieu, like guys that made plays. Like their
Yep,
defense
Chris
wasn't
Jones.
incredible, but
Yep.
they had guys that would get turnovers, make plays.
I think their best defensive player in that game was Chris Jones. He was unbelievable in the Super Bowl.
He's probably the best.
Chris Jones has
top five
been one of the, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Chris Jones has been that good.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
just a D lineman. So if you're not Warren Sapp or Aaron Donald, doesn't matter. If you're not JJ
Yeah.
Watt, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
He's legitimate.
He's really good.
Yeah, so guys, Tom Brady doesn't seem to be heeding a lot of the warnings about coronavirus. You know, it's like he went over to Byron Leftwich's house when you weren't necessarily allowed to. And then this weekend they come out and say that team practices or team get-togethers should not take place for some time. And you hear the Tom Brady's out there today with 12 guys. And I just think it's funny because Tom Brady is just so exceptionally motivated, even through coronavirus, like getting these guys together, making guys play. They said that Gronkowski was out there and, some of the other receivers. And I just think it's interesting that he's like pushing through and seeming not to, it's just such a far cry from the last couple of years here in New England where he had clearly bought out because he didn't get that contract. And you just see what the contract's done and how much buy-in he's got. I mean, really think that Tom Brady's going to have a stellar year. It seems like he's going to be as prepared as anybody when this year starts off.
Absolutely. And they've been saying that Brady was trying to leave New England for the last 4 or 5 years. He was unhappy about quite a bit. I actually heard from a off-the-record source, someone who works at TB12, that Tom actually was butting heads with Josh McDaniels over play calling. Tom wanted to run his own offense, call his own plays, and they wouldn't give that opportunity to him. Josh wouldn't relinquish the duties. So Belichick was overall led to handle the differences between the two, and it just led to a little bit of a deteriorating situation, is why Tom ultimately left to Tampa, because they will be letting him run his own plays and call his own plays.
That's
I mean,
for
you
sure.
think Byron Leftwich is calling plays for Tom Brady? Let's be real here. You're going to have Byron Leftwich call the plays for Tom Brady? No. Tom's down there. He's running his own offense. He's brought in one of his own guys in Gronk. He doesn't care. He's out there to win. He's out there to prove everyone wrong and show that he can do it. Once again, Tom using that chip on his shoulder to basically rally himself and the team to come back and hopefully play for another Super Bowl. And from what I'm hearing, he wants to play till he's 50 now.
Isn't it amazing that no matter what this guy goes through, he still seems to come back and motivate himself? I mean, how in God's name is he this motivated through coronavirus? You think about all these guys that are coming back heavier, guys that are saying, oh, I haven't touched a ball in this many days. Tom Brady is this like married guy with a family, and it's just like he's still breaking all the rules, or breaking some of the rules, for what the NFL is allowing. You got to love it. I mean, he's the ultimate competitor. And
I mean, Brady's never been the guy to have like the athlete that is the best athlete in the room, the elite talent. He's had to work for every single thing, and he's now obviously the greatest, but he had to work for all of it. And I think for him, the motivation is if he takes time off to a couple weeks where he's not throwing, the gap in between him and what he potentially could be on a worse scale, it could drop. And he's also 43 years old. And the other thing is he's going to a new team. He has to learn a whole new offense. Granted, he's going to run his own offense, but he has to get in sync with all his new receivers and everybody to make sure everyone's on the same page. He's had the same offense for 20 years in New England. Everyone knows it, and he doesn't need to go to all these OTAs. Giselle wanted him home.
Do you think if he had got the contract, the $50 million from the Pats, he would have, continued to stay at home, or you think he would have gone to passing camps?
He was gone. I think he was gone before the year even started.
He was gone.
100%.
Do you think there was nothing they could have done? You don't think if they came to the table and gave him the $50 million, that just the deal that Tampa Bay gave him, that he wouldn't have thought that through?
No.
Look at his talent in Tampa Bay. Look at his talent in New England.
Oh, I got to disagree.
They needed
I think
to
he
offer
wanted to
him
stay
after,
here, and they gave him no choice.
I think that's true after the Super Bowl, not after last year. I think after they didn't give him the money after the Super Bowl, he knew if they're not going to give me the money now and I want to play for another 4 or 5 years, F them. I'm done.
If they're going to make me sing for incentives after I win a Super Bowl and after I win MVP, if I don't get a contract after I win MVP, I mean, when are these guys ever going to pay me? They're not going to pay me as I get older.
When we made that decision, he made the decision he was leaving, and I don't blame him.
I agree.
I mean, hey, it's not just Tom either. He's got another half. Her name's Giselle Bundchen. I don't know if you've heard of her. And she
Super G.
She hated it.
Hated it here.
Happy wife, happy life. Tom had to get out while the getting was good.
All right.
The demise of the Patriots, Giselle.
Well, hey, let's shift the discussion a bit to the NBA. Something that I thought was pretty interesting this week. Colin Cowherd said that Jayson Tatum is the second best player in the East, and he said that Brad Stevens is the best coach in the East. He said tied with Eric Spoelstra. Curious to see how that hits with you guys. Where do you rank Jayson Tatum, following, obviously, we're putting Giannis as number one in the East?
I think Tatum's been 2 this year. I absolutely love Tatum, and I think he's going to be probably 26 a game for probably the next 6-7 years. I think the highest ceiling is Embiid, and that includes Giannis. I think Embiid has the ability to be the most dominant player in the NBA. He just doesn't seem to want it. He doesn't seem to care enough. He's and he's talking about Sean Kemp candidates. Joel Embiid is a Sean Kemp candidate. He might come back his worst self and never recover, but his ceiling is massive. That guy should be 3 blocks a game. That guy is 30 points, 12. I mean, he's
so athletic for 7'2".
And he shoots 30% from 3. I think it's gone down this year, but I think the year before was 30%. He doesn't fit well with Ben Simmons, but he is absolutely got the talent to be the most talented player in the East, possibly even the league. I think Giannis and Jayson Tatum have been 1 and 2 all year. I think that's probably hard to argue. But Jayson Tatum, I think, his game is so reminiscent of Kobe that I just have such a fondness for him. I watch him pass up open shots to take contested shots and make them. And even though that's wrong, I love it. I couldn't love it anymore.
Are there any other guys you put up there, Frank? Like when you think about it, I mean, I feel like you'd be remiss if you didn't mention. I feel like Bradley Beal has had just like an incredible year this year. He's averaged 30 points. He's been over like 5 rebounds, 5 assists. I think he's really taken a big next step. I don't know if it's just because John Wall's not playing, but Bradley Beal, only 26 years old, going up to 30 points a game. I've been really impressed by him. And I'd say Jimmy Butler is another guy, too, that I've been really impressed with this year in the East. He makes 9 free throws a game. He's leading that young team. Does a lot of different things. But are there any other guys that you kind of think of when you think of the East and top 2 potential guys? This is also taking out Durant and Kyrie.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I mean, are we including them, not including them?
We're taking out Durant and Kyrie for the purposes of this.
As we should. And I would still take Jayson Tatum over Kyrie. I don't think that that's much of a conversation either. What Tatum brings, not only on the offensive end, but also on the defensive end, you look at that and you compare that to Kyrie Irving's overall impact. Yes, Kyrie can get a bucket whenever he wants, but so can Jayson Tatum. So I think Tatum is absolutely in a league above Kyrie. And I think that's part of the reason why Kyrie really wanted out. I think he saw the directions that the Celtics were heading in, where this was going to be Tatum's team and not his team for too much longer. But regardless of that, I do absolutely think Jayson Tatum is the second best player in the East right now. I'll take him over Jimmy Butler. I'll take him over Joel Embiid. Obviously, the team and the fit around Embiid is, I believe, weighing him down a little bit. That, along with his eating habits and his potential to be the next Sean Kemp, if in this little hiatus that we're having right now from the NBA. So yeah, no, I would absolutely say Jayson Tatum second best player, Giannis undisputed best player, and rolls from there. But I would still take Durant over if Durant comes back fully healthy. I would still take Durant over Tatum, and that'd be it. I would take Giannis, Durant, and then Tatum in that order as the top three in the East.
Curious to see where you guys would put Trae Young in these discussions. He's a young guy that is putting up almost like 30 points a game. He doesn't do it on the defensive end like Tatum does, and that's where he loses me. You know, I think because Tatum's bigger, because he has more of a defensive presence, I think, you know, guys that are bigger are always going to be a bit more valuable than guards. And, you know, I obviously would take him over there, but what do you guys think about Trae Young and what he's doing in Atlanta this year?
He's definitely top five. Trae Young in the East. I think a player we're all forgetting that hasn't played this year, but should, or a little bit, is Victor Oladipo. Victor Oladipo on both sides was nasty last year for the Pacers. I'm not saying he's to the level of Jayson Tatum or Durant or Giannis, but on both sides of the floor, Victor Oladipo is probably one of the best two-way players in the NBA. And he changes that Pacers team.
I would take Derrick Rose over Victor Oladipo right now.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Victor Oladipo is like a short version of Jimmy Butler. They're just gritty bulldogs. I absolutely love Victor Oladipo. He's not quite in this discussion, but he's a winner.
Yeah.
He's your team. If you have a bad team, he'll make it an average team. If you have an average team, he'll make it a good team. He's Evan Turner, but his game isn't ugly.
A little bit better than Evan Turner, but I agree with you. He's a smaller version of Jimmy Butler is the best way to put it. And no one's talking about Marcus Smart. He's a top five player, isn't he?
Oh, God.
In his head,
Defensively, yes.
Oh,
he thinks he's a top five 3-point shooter. That's for sure.
Marksman.
Bombs away.
3 for 12 every game.
Let's lay off my guy Marcus. He has the Celtics record for three-pointers made in the game.
Most attempted.
How many did he shoot? What do you mean?
I believe
he shouldn't be allowed to shoot. He should get tased or like electrocuted. Like when he he should wear some type of collar that when he gets close to 10. Sometimes you see him jack up 13, and you're like, this guy shoots 35%. It's just low percentage shots.
Yeah, whatever. You need that type of player on your team in the playoffs, though. So I'll take that. Regular season,
he's shooting a higher percentage from 3 than Klay Thompson is right now.
Right, but who do you want to shoot 3? Klay Thompson.
He made 11. He made 11.
What are you saying? Klay Thompson's shooting 0%?
Marcus Smart no. Klay Thompson last year shot 37.8%. Marcus Smart is shooting 38.8% this year.
How many more threes did Klay Thompson shoot than Marcus Smart?
I don't know, but Marcus Smart has made 522 threes in his Celtics career, and he made 11 in one game, which was the record for the Celtics. It doesn't say what his total number of attempts was, but I'd imagine it's got to be around 15 or so.
So let's get back to your take on Derrick Rose.
Derrick Rose has been phenomenal this year. He is absolutely an unsung hero, someone that's coming in, making a difference every night. That Pistons team without him is pure garbage.
They're garbage with him. They're garbage with him. And look, I love this story, but he's just that. He's a story. He's a great comeback story. He's a volume scorer. Google his shooting percentage and get back to me. Derrick Rose is scoring a lot because he's shooting a lot, and he showed that team doesn't have great players on it. But he has not been phenomenal. He's been very good, especially considering the long road back that he had.
Derrick
But
Rose
that's
shooting
about it.
49% from the field.
18.1 points per game, 2.5 rebounds, 5.6 assists, and a whole hell of a lot of lockdown defense.
Scoring that
My
team.
guy,
Lockdown
D-Rose.
defense.
Lockdown defense.
Honestly, could have been one of the greatest players, if he doesn't get hurt. 22-year-old MVP with 25, almost 8. I mean, that guy was like one of the best finishers, I feel like, too. Reminded me of like a D Wade at the point guard position almost. Like
25,
his ability
8,
to
and 4.
And he single-handedly played against those Celtics teams. That was like before they had got a whole lot of talent. They never really got
Ben Gordon showed up for those. He got help from Ben Gordon. Ben Gordon had that one shootout with Ray Allen. He did. That was phenomenal. And they had an aging, not good anymore, but still one of my favorite players, Ben Wallace. He was floating around on that team before he went to Cleveland.
If they played any other team, I love that Bulls team. Like
I do too.
I particularly love Noah. I don't care what anyone says.
Oh,
he takes every
love
game.
Noah.
Oh, of course. You don't want that when he was in his prime. You wouldn't want that guy on your team.
I would want him on my team. Yeah,
great defensive player.
He was like a defensive player of the year candidate in his prime.
And then you guys know where Noah is now.
He's nowhere.
LA.
No, he's with
LA.
the Clippers. The Clippers.
Yeah.
Clippers signed him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus, who haven't they signed?
They're loading up.
Their other option is Zubac, so I guess they'll go with Noah.
They had to get a little bit bigger down low to compete with what the Lakers have. Because I'll tell you what, that's going to be very overpowering come playoff time. Very suffocating defensively, having Dwight Howard, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and more. Even JaVale McKee. You could run out a lineup with LeBron running the point, Avery Bradley at the 2, and then Anthony Davis at the 3, Dwight at the 4, and JaVale at the 5, which would be absolutely ridiculous. I don't think we'll see it too much, but I would love to.
Yeah, I think they're incredibly deep and they're incredibly good defensively. I think the Clippers are much deeper, so that's going to be tough. Go ahead, Frank.
The plus minus for the lineup you just listed would not be good. There are not enough shooters around LeBron to make that work. Secondly,
it's a video game lineup.
Sure, and you'll get a lot of dunks, but in real life, that's not a practical lineup. Also, he may not have Dwight Howard or Danny Green or Avery Bradley if they decide they're not playing. If everybody plays, I think the Lakers will win. But do
you think LeBron's realistically going to let guys not play? And this his best to last, probably. I would say this is his best last shot at a championship. Will he have other chances in his career at championships? Sure, but
why is it his best last shot?
Dude, he's in year 17. I mean, the clock is ticking. I mean, he's got a hell of a roster around him.
Have you seen his beard? He looks like Santa.
What if they get Bradley Beal in the offseason? They need another star.
I'm just saying, how many more kicks at the can is LeBron going to have? Best kicks at the can,
Why would the Wizards give them Bradley Beal? Why would the Wizards give the Lakers Bradley Beal?
Why would they?
They
better not give Bradley Beal to the Nets. That's what I'm saying.
But the Lakers have nothing to give them. The Nets have way more to offer than probably anyone.
Jordan, they got Caruso. Caruso for Beal straight up. I do that.
The Nets would offer Jarrett Allen, Karis LeVert.
That's because they're idiots.
In a package if they could.
That is because they're
for
idiots.
Bradley Beal.
Are there no free agents available? I mean, at least sign some one-year deals with shooters. Like Rondo is not a fit for that team. Like get some actual guys that can shoot so LeBron can be the point guard and just facilitate it. I mean, they don't have a small forward. Who's a small forward? Danny Green?
LeBron's a small
Danny
forward.
Green's the shooting guard.
Yeah, Danny Green is a shooting guard. LeBron's a small forward.
LeBron was playing point guard.
No. And
he is playing point guard.
But Rondo's out there. Rondo's a starter, isn't he? For the Lakers, he's starting.
I think you can do better than Rondo. No offense to Rondo. R.I.P. I love Rondo for life, but come on.
The Lakers are a deep team, though.
Not as deep as
the Lakers
are.
They're
not as deep as the Clippers.
I'll take Beverly all day over Rondo.
So will I. At this point in their career, yes. I do think Rondo was a much better player.
Who's going to guard Kawhi in the Lakers? LeBron won't do it. He's afraid to guard Kawhi. In his whole career, he won't guard Kawhi Leonard.
Well, that's because he doesn't want to expend all of his energy.
So who's going to guard Paul George?
Don't they have one of the Morris twins?
Yeah, and they have the better.
Yeah.
They have actually the better.
Doesn't matter. They're
Stick,
both
stick
equal
one of the
parts
Morris
crazy.
twins on someone.
Yeah, exactly. The Morris
Now
twins
they
will
have
end up guarding
no-
LeBron and Kawhi. Trust
No one's
me.
going to bring them
What?
home the championship.
Hey,
So one player that the Lakers formerly had that's starting to draw some interest ahead of the restart is none other than DeMarcus Cousins. Now,
Yeah.
are you guys at all interested in a DeMarcus Cousins at this stage of his career? Because
Yes.
I got to say that I totally am.
Is he
I've
healthy?
been-
Yes. Give me Boogie. Give me
any
Boogie.
team but mine.
No. Give him
Any
to the
team but mine.
Celtics. Put him at center. Get him healthy. And we've got that's an NBA Finals winning lineup right there.
So Adrian Wojnarowski talked about Cousins' potential plans. He said, Cousins and his agent, Jeff Schwartz, I'm told they're going to be very careful about where they might commit. There's teams interested, but they have to find the right situation for him to come back now. If they can give him another 6 months of rehab and prep for next season, wouldn't rule out a team this year, but it's got to be the right team. So
Send him to Houston. Be perfect fit there.
just
Oh,
add it.
perfect
Just
fit.
add, yeah.
Yeah.
Add
that'd be
on.
pretty nice.
Center, PJ Tucker.
That would be smooth.
PJ Tucker, yeah. I mean, he would easily be their best center.
Talk
Well,
about that locker room.
They
you
have
would need
Capella
someone
still,
with
don't they?
cap space.
No,
Who
they got
even
rid of
has
Capella.
cap-
They sent Capella to the Hawks.
And he hasn't played a game. I don't. He's not even hurt, is he?
Who?
Capella. He hasn't played one game.
He hasn't?
No, he's sitting on the
No,
bench.
he was injured.
Oh, he was injured.
Oh.
Well, they have John Collins, too. I didn't understand why they wanted Capella. John Collins is a beast.
He's a
We're
power.
trying to make him a 4.
Yeah. I don't know. I just
If
felt
we
like
look at salary cap for next season, we have
Well, DeMarcus Cousins is going to be expensive, so it doesn't
DeMarcus Cousins is?
not going to be expensive. So
Oh,
it doesn't
he
matter
won't
what
be
your
this-
salary cap situation is. You
exactly,
can afford to bring him
because
in.
he signed for like the veteran minimum, like the last 2 deals he's made.
It's really unfortunate. I mean, the Isaiah Thomas thing is unfortunate, but Boogie Cousins, you're talking about a
passed
top
up a
5
2
player. That is sad. He's up in that T-Mac, Grant Hill. He's up in that rarefied air of, boy, would I have liked to have seen you go for 10 years.
Yeah, and I think it's just tough for him because he could have had like a huge deal with the Pelicans. He decides to give it up and do that, went to the Warriors for a little bit of cash, and that ended up being the worst move he could have had financially for his career, everything. The Pelicans were offering him a 2-year, $40 million deal, and he took pennies to go play for the Warriors. So sometimes it's not always worth the risk if you don't win that ring.
That was all a PR move. I feel like
Yeah.
to show that he can be a team.
Show that he could buy in.
Yeah, but like when
It's
he
not
was-
that hard to just sit alongside with the Warriors and win a championship.
When him and Davis were on the Pelicans, that was like unstoppable down low. They were both averaging like 25 a game, and Rondo was their point guard, just throwing up alley-oops the entire game. Drew Holiday, if they had gotten, obviously they can't Brandon Ingram now, but if they had a small forward, that team actually like could have gone like a round or 2 in the playoffs.
I think that was honestly Rondo's best year too.
I agree.
He had a hell of a year that year. He didn't. They had a $6 million option on him, I think, the next year, and they didn't take it. I'm pretty sure
Now they have
because
Lonzo.
Rondo's such a pain in the ass.
He epitomizes basketball players. He's got such a high basketball IQ. He is impossible to deal with. You can't, and he's also the most selfish passer I've ever seen in my life. The man would dribble the ball for 22 seconds, pass it to somebody with no other option but to shoot. Sure, they'd be open, but he was like the biggest selfish assist man I've ever seen. I don't know how else to describe it.
Well, he would just dribble the
Basketball
ball into the
genius,
ground.
but-
I hated the streak
Yes.
that he had. Remember the
Yes.
double-digit streak that Doc
Yes.
Rivers would not stop? He would let him get it. It's
And
like,
it was so important to Rondo.
we're gonna lose by 20, but Rondo will have 10 assists.
and be so proud. He's annoying. He's a basketball genius, but he takes all the fun out of the game. And he is a great passer. He is an excellent game manager. He was an excellent defender when we needed him to be for those Celtics teams. he's not going to be looked at as great as he was at his peak. But
How
he is
old do you think
horrible to have to
DeMarcus
interact
Cousins
with.
is?
28.
29. Yeah, he's sub
20,
30, right?
29. Yeah, still.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like he's been kicked around at this point. You start to think
But
maybe.
what was it? ACL and Achilles, right?
Yeah, it was the Achilles with the Warriors, and then it was his ACL with the Lakers.
It's tough for a man that big to come back from those.
Yeah.
He's not AP.
Oh yeah, he's not
6'10" and a
made for
half.
an Achilles injury.
Yeah. No, he's not.
That's why I'd be shocked if Durant comes back fully healthy. And he's every year moving forward, he is not hurt. Like, not fully season, but I don't think he plays a full season again the rest of his career.
Because he's 7'1", and because even though he's more frail, so yes, he's maybe more conditioned for this. He's more like a runner in that aspect. He's too big to handle that injury. 7'1" doesn't do foot injuries.
Yeah.
Ask Yao. It doesn't do it.
Who's 7'1"?
Durant is 7'1". He's listed at 6'9". He's 7'1". He's taller than Cousins. You've seen them next to each other. They're on the same team. He's taller than Cousins in the same way LeBron was taller than Ben Wallace, but somehow listed as 2 inches shorter.
Yeah,
trust me, the man is 7 foot tall. Look at him next to other tall players. Durant's taller.
I heard when they played on the Olympic teams, everybody was like, "Man, you 7 feet." Like, I remember hearing that.
Yeah.
Like all the guys that were actually around him. Yeah, I mean, so how do you see him coming back from that injury? Do you think do you think we ever see the Durant that we saw pre-injury?
I think he's such a skilled player that his floor is so high, he'll still come back. I don't think he'll be – Dominique came back and maintained his explosiveness, right? He's kind of the poster child for an Achilles injury. He came back and lost almost nothing. I think Durant, his game will change. Much like when Pedro got older, he needed to locate his off pitches and not just blow people down with a fastball. Durant's going to need to take a little bit more threes if he wants to maintain the same points per game average. He's going to need to do more of the mid-range things, but he has those tools in his arsenal. He's not going to the rack with reckless abandon like he did ever again. That's over. That's done now. But he can still be a wildly productive player, and he can still be a top 3-4 player in this league. I think his run at
what percentage is that him at? 80%?
Even if he's 85%, he's still a top 5 player. But
80,
I do think every year he's going to miss 25 games, 30 games. Like, he's gonna need lots of rest, and unless, and God forbid, he's with Kyrie, so that team's never going anywhere. But I wish it never happened, because he constantly could be a top 10 NBA player of all time if he stayed healthy. How old is he? 30, 31?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people thought he was on pace to be a top 10 player of all time.
He's better than Bird, like, as a small forward all time, if he stayed healthy and continued. And I don't know if that's going to happen, but we'll see. I just think that injury is very hard to come back from at 7 feet.
Yeah, after looking over the salary cap, I think the perfect spot for DeMarcus Cousins, and this one actually makes a lot of sense, is for him to go to the Wizards. You put him on the Wizards, they've got $15 million in maximum cap space next offseason. You give DeMarcus Cousins $15 million, you pair him with Rui Hachimura, you pair him with John Wall, and a healthy John Wall and Bradley Beal, and that's a very serious contender in the Eastern Conference.
I'm excited to see a healthy John Wall with this new Bradley Beal. I mean, people kind of forget how explosive of a backcourt they were. They never really had like a top-notch center or a top-notch power forward with those guys, so they never really.
Who was the Russian, the Polak guy? He
was Marcin
Gortat.
He was awesome.
Yes.
I would love for him to be in the Celtics.
The Polish hammer, but he wasn't.
He was kind of like a backup.
He played his role the right way.
He's like a Daniel Tice.
Exactly. He's a good player.
But he was better than Tice. But
no.
Tice had a good year this year, though.
Best value contract in the NBA this year. Sign him to that 2-year deal.
How much of that is
saying that?
How much of that
overrated
is
depth players?
How much of that of his performance though is Tice versus the offense he's in and the greatness of the players around him? He's the worst player out on the floor pretty much anytime he's out there.
I agree.
I would say he's picked up his defense. I feel like he's blocking a lot more shots this year. And I feel like he's actually finishing around the rim a bit more too. Like he's scored a little bit more than, I mean, I don't love Tice, but I feel like he's been a good bench big this year for the Celtics.
I mean, he's a system guy, obviously. I'm not saying he's a great player, but he's playing the same role almost essentially as Horford for $30 million less. He's not as good as Horford, but for $30 million less, I would take that over Horford. With this team currently, not
I would have taken
yeah.
Horford back in a heartbeat.
Really?
Give me well,
No.
think about it like this:
if you had to,
if you're in the luxury, who are they bringing in instead?
Horford.
You could sign. It was a sign and trade with Kemba. It didn't make any difference. What mattered was Al just had to happen to agree to a contract the day before the Celtics officially got Kemba.
Would you
didn't know about it?
4 years? Because I don't. I think
you would want 4 more years of him.
No, not 4 more years of him. I would like a few. I think with this roster, he helps us with our bid to win a championship over Daniel Tice. I think that's a no-brainer. 4 years of
4 years.
Contract. What did Horford get for a contract again?
4 years, like 90, or was it 100?
He got like 100 something. It was like 103.
Yeah,
maybe it been up to 112, something like that.
That's pretty gross. I think that is pretty gross long term. But if you're trying to win a championship,
I was amazed he got the first $100 million contract with us. He got a second $1 million contract, $100 million contract after us. I thought that was. I remember hearing rumors that they said that he didn't think he was going to get anywhere near to like $100 million. Like they thought he was going to be back with the Celtics. Like a 3-year, $60 million deal would get it done. But that's not the case.
Yeah, he's gone now.
So Davis Bertans is not going to be joining the bubble. And that kind of starts for some of these other guys. I mean, Bertans is a guy that averages 15 points. He's not like an all-star, but he is a pretty decent player that's saying that he's not going to be going to the bubble. Trevor Ariza is another guy. But do you guys think that this starts to spur some other big names to say that they're not going to go to the bubble in Orlando? You think this is something for like some of the middling guys? Is this causing you any concern?
No.
At the moment, it's not, but I think I said it to you earlier. If it hits that next, because I think all great players with something to gain legacy-wise will be here. I think anybody who's legitimately a driving force of a championship team will have no problem doing this bubble. I think if it starts to hit the next tier of guys, if it's your Lou Williams, if it's Zion, well, I guess Zion's high profile, but that level of production, if it just starts being those key role players. I think it's going to be a huge problem. And really all I'm looking for is no asterisk. I just want a team to be as healthy and whole as they can be so we can get some remnants of a champion. And at the moment, I don't think Dwight Howard is causing a ruckus. I don't think anybody who's decided they're not playing is a big factor. I know Bertans is a wonderful key piece of any system he's a part of. He's a shooting big man. But I think until it hits that next wave, the sixth man, the first guy off the bench, or your fifth start or your last starter. I think once you hit that territory, there's pause for concern because then what are we doing here?
Yeah. And I think that, that Bertans is going to spur some other guys, and Trevor Ariza, I think they'll spur some other guys. I just hope it doesn't get too far. And I hope that the competitors, the teams that are like really in it, like, you could see Bertans not going because he's on the Wizards. But I'm hoping that it doesn't spread to some of the contenders. You hope that teams like the Lakers, the Clippers, the Celtics are going to be able to keep full rosters. It would definitely be a shame and would probably add to that asterisk, as you mentioned. So who do we think is going to be a Sean Kemp candidate? We mentioned that Joel Embiid could definitely be one. Marcus Smart is a guy that kind of comes to mind for me. I feel like he's not a guy who carries himself maybe the best off the court. I've heard like some rumors, and I just feel like he's a guy that I could see blowing up quick. Is there anybody else that comes to mind for you guys that's going to blow up quick? Aside from maybe Luka Doncic, I heard he may get a little doughy.
I haven't seen pictures. I heard he got big. I would have said, ironically, I would have said Harden and I would have said Jokic. Now they both seem to be in excellent shape. based on
Yeah.
Instagram pictures. But
Yeah,
they
Jokic
were
has the corona.
shoo-in candidates
Jokic
for
has
first
corona.
round
That's
camp.
how he shredded it.
Right. That's I should have remembered. That's exactly how he did it. Better than P90X.
They look great.
I don't. He does. But he also went to a nightclub with like 15 people after having a basketball camp where there was no social distancing. He's sick on purpose. Like, you're stupid. I'm sorry to take that conversation here, but what an idiot. Like, that was
Like
no
Novak
surprise you ended up
Djokovic.
with corona. Yeah, no surprise that you ended up with corona. You went clubbing, you had a camp, no masks, no social distancing. You got sick. Please be smarter. That's a bigger concern of mine than players not going to the bubble. Is players not staying within the bubble and getting sick. Because once a person gets sick, they're out for a series.
Yeah.
These guys think that they're superheroes, man. They're out there doing whatever they want. They don't think anything's going to touch them, and then hopefully, it doesn't spread more. But a lot of these athletes you've seen have been out partying, doing whatever, like meeting up, like Dak and Zeke having their little slumber parties and whatnot. It's not a good look, but it's one of those
who
things
also
where
had
it's like
corona.
Zeke, who also had corona. Yes.
Zeke, who is the athlete I am least surprised got corona.
Yes.
I feel like I've seen pictures with that guy, like with his tongue out of his mouth or whatever. It's just like, so we'll finish up on this. Some pretty interesting sound out of Indiana today. Paul George was talking, saying that a few years ago, the reason why he left Indiana was because he could have had the best power forward in the game joining up with him, and Indiana wasn't willing to pull the trigger on that. Who do you think he's talking about? And how good do you think Indiana could have potentially have been adding somebody like Anthony Davis?
I think that's the name, and I hope that's the name. The article I read said Paul Millsap. I would hope that Paul George doesn't think Paul Millsap was the best power forward in the game, and I don't think
the
that
best
he takes
old
them over
power
the
forward
top
in the
either.
game.
Hey, he's a very productive power forward. He's not taking that team to the next level. And I think Paul George has always been just slightly less than since he broke his leg. And not his fault. But the big issue is how good of Indiana could have been with Paul George. Was he going to break his leg? If he stayed healthy and stayed there, I think without another superstar, I think he was legit. I think he was in that Kawhi, LeBron, Durant territory. I don't think he's there anymore. I think he's just a tier down. But any great power forward, so that's why, with hyperbole, he might have been talking about Millsap. Because with hyperbole, another top 15 player, he might think brings him to the next level. But he doesn't.
So you don't
and
think
AD
he
does,
needed
and that's
to
why
leave
I hope
Indiana?
that's the name.
You don't think he needed to leave Indiana? You think he had
No,
a
I
team
think-
there that could compete?
Not the way it was constructed, but again, there's going to be free agents every year. This is the NBA. And if you have Paul George, you have a shot of getting somebody else here. If the Celtics had Paul George, we wouldn't need to sign Al Horford. And I understand he fit our schematic scheme, or he fit our scheme, but we would have been able to get a better player if we had a better player. That's how NBA players' minds work. Every NBA player is a wide receiver. You have to think of them like that. Very fragile. Paul George was a top 3 player, and if he was still a top 3 player committed to Indiana, they could have got somebody else. And if he's saying they had a trade in place, AD is a perfectly humble person. He was already in New Orleans. They weren't winning. I think the timeline adds up. You can always trade NBA salary. It doesn't work like the salary cap of the NFL. There's way more loopholes. And I hope it was AD, because no other player really makes sense. A Blake Griffin, a Paul Millsap, those players don't take you over the top. And I think he didn't necessarily need that, but everybody needs a viable 2. And he didn't have that.
He
had
said
George Hill and Roy
at
Hibbert.
the time that he was the best power forward in the game, but now he's like the 10th to 20th best, right? Is that what he was saying?
No. So what he said was essentially there was a player that wanted to come with him who he said was the best power forward in the game. I believe that this was Blake Griffin and or a Kevin Durant potentially. I think that's almost a stretch. Like, what franchise is going to say that they're a small market team and they can't bring in Kevin Durant? None. But what franchise is going to say we're a small market team and we're not bringing in Blake Griffin? I think that many small market teams look at Blake Griffin and they say, this guy's an injury waiting to happen. Like, his game's built on athleticism. And they looked at that and they probably said, all right, we don't want Blake here, because Blake was a free agent at that time. and he would have paired beautifully with Paul George in Indiana. Those two would have been a fantastic duo on the wing. I mean, you could have made an argument at that time. Blake Griffin was the best power forward in the game 3 years ago, 2017.
Yeah.
I don't think that's far off.
I think you could say that Blake Griffin was potentially a name. I could think you could even say that Kevin Love was potentially a name at that point in time. But
he wasn't a free agent, though, Kevin Love, at that point in time.
That's true.
Yeah, and it was a free agent. And that summer, that was the year Kevin Durant was a free agent. And it was KD and Blake Griffin and a host of others that were free agents. And those are the only two that would have made any sense.
All right. Well, hey, that's going to free us up. Speaking of free agents, how about that transition? That's going to do it for us this week on open season. Great talking with you guys back and forth. We had some pretty good stuff. So next week, 8:00, tune in. Thank you guys for joining, and we'll talk to you later.
Later.